I started ordering a lot of merch for a nonprofit that I was associated with, and every time we would place an order, a lot of it would come wrong. That alone got my mind racing to think, hey, this company's making a lot of money and they're making a lot of mistakes. I think I could do this better. We made 496 cold calls until we got to calling Zappos.com. That first order, I literally didn't even know how to design an item. They were holding my hand throughout the whole process because I seemed like I wanted to learn and was willing to do whatever it took to work with them. I'm a big believer in leverage because I looked at it as once we got a big whale, now we can use the big whale to catch bigger whales. Early on, it was all about customer service. That's what I live by. I want people to get their information and their product ASAP. And I want to be so easy to work with that people don't have any reason to go anywhere else.
I'm super excited to learn how you started this business, how you operate the business, how you've scaled. We're going to uncover all of that. But first, I'd love to get your origin story. How did you get to what you're doing now and being able to grow Indigo Promotions to the point you've gotten already?
Yeah, so I graduated from college in 2019, and all 4 years that I was there at Rider University, I was thinking, what business am I going to have when I get out of here? I had a million ideas, and I was really the definition of a entrepreneur. I'd be looking at all these advanced strategies of how to incorporate these things into an imaginary business, and it was really frustrating because I didn't know exactly what business I wanted to start. I started ordering a lot of merch for a nonprofit that I was associated with, and every time we would place an order, large orders, not nothing, $5,000, $10,000, $20,000. A lot of it would come wrong. It would have holes in it. It would be the wrong color. It would be the wrong imprint. And that alone got my mind racing to think, hey, this company's making a lot of money and they're making a lot of mistakes. I think I could do this better. And that was really all of my market research at the time. I quit my job, jumped right into it and said, if they can figure it out and make money from it, so can I. And ever since then, that's really been what we have been built off of at Indigo. And it was luckily a correct hypothesis, but from there, I jumped right into the industry and started figuring out how to design cool products, how to work with cool brands, and how to make merch iconic.
Wow. Okay. So, I mean, you're jumping in the pond with some big dogs, right? 4imprint, Vistaprint. There's a handful of them we could list off here. So when you were getting started in this, what was literally the first step you took? Because I could see where this could feel like a daunting task or a daunting area to jump into. But honestly, that's the same across so many, maybe all of the industries out there, right? There's already somebody doing what you're doing. It's a matter of doing it better or doing it different. But what were those first steps like for you?
I skipped a lot of steps early on. My initial strategy was if I have someone who's wanting a product, I will figure it out. If they give me an order for X amount of money, I'm going to figure out how to make that product work and make that order work. So I just started cold calling people. I jumped right into it. I actually took a famous podcast called How I Built This. I found their list of episodes and I would just cold call companies that were on there. And it wasn't really getting anywhere for the first, month of doing it. I was calling hundreds of people, per month and per day. And it was really just to figure out what things do I need to say to have the potential of working with a client. And I love that first step. And obviously I would do things differently now, but that was my first move because I didn't know anything. And I just felt like maybe instead of learning from the vendors in the industry, the 4imprints, the Halos, the whoever, maybe I can just learn from clients and they can kind of be my playground as I go along with it. And ultimately that strategy ended up working because we picked up a few clients from just cold calling people. And they really helped me get educated on the industry as I was just learning as we went. So it was kind of a cool little back and forth that I had with all of my early clients.
I love that you mentioned that you said that your start was in cold calling. I mean, that is the ultimate, I think for so many people, the biggest fear is just taking action and doing it in a, targeted, but still for you, it was cold, right? You had a targeted list that you picked from that podcast, but you started calling, you just took the action and you did it, you jumped in and it sounds like you didn't even have the intention of making a ton of sales because as you know, the game is rejection, right? Like learning how to do it. But I loved how you mentioned, I was just trying to figure out what the market wanted and I needed to figure out my messaging and be able to talk to people when I do contact them about this. So first of all, kudos to that. And I want to put emphasis on the fact you said you're making like 100 calls a day or more, right? I think so many people try cold calling or, insert, attempt here. and they do it 4 times. They're like, it's not for me. I don't like it. I can't do this. But it was hundreds of times, right? Like it was a volume game for you.
And it wasn't even close to having success. Like I was getting hung up on, I was getting cursed at. It was just rejection there was slam phone call after slam phone call after slam phone call. But that was kind of cool because I just felt like, all right, like on the days where I got a good response, or maybe someone would tell me, hey, we already have a vendor for this, but maybe check back in 6 months. I would leave and be like, yes, like win. We got further along. So it was kind of cool to just have like, the game wasn't to make sales. And obviously that's, usually the game for people. But the first couple of months, it was just how far can I get in this phone call with sounding knowledgeable and actually speaking to people who are spending money on these products. Because I know if I got far enough down that line that eventually I could pull something from it and get an order or two from it.
So what did you have in the works? Let's say on your 202nd phone call, someone says, all right, yeah, you know what? I'd like to place an order and it totals $2,000. Tell us about your first order and then how you went about fulfilling it.
Yeah, so this is actually my favorite story from the early years. We made 496 cold calls until we got to calling Zappos.com. And when I called Zappos.com, obviously the big shoe brand out in Vegas,
Yeah.
I did my, usual spiel and told them I was a vendor that creates all types of branded merchandise and promotional products. I would love to talk to their buyer about using our company. And normally that ended in a click. This time they told me, hey, I know who the buyer is here. Let me get her on the phone. And eventually I'm like, whoa, they're going to put me through? Like I'd never made it this far before. Eventually a couple of minutes go by and I'm talking then to the person who's actually the buyer. And they basically seem super interested. They say they're looking for a new swag vendor. Very nice woman who I still keep in touch with to this day. And from that one phone call there, it led to about 50 orders in the first year of doing business together. And again, I didn't know what I was doing. Like that first order, I literally didn't even know how to design an item and make it work. They were holding my hand throughout the whole process because I seemed nice, because I seemed like I wanted to learn, and just I kind of gave off the impression that was willing to do whatever it took to work with them. And I think they really appreciated that. And it gave me a big cushion to make mistakes early on and ask dumb questions. And having them, and still a big client of mine to this day, was huge early on. They were one of my first big clients and one of my first clients, period.
Wow. So that almost, I feel like that's the reward for your tenacity, right? Is the fact that sit on your 496 call, someone at Zappos, like you were probably just like, oh, this is a whale. Let's just see what we can do, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And they get you through to the buyer. The buyer is, nice and talks with you and then actually pays you money to, place an order, and you keep putting in the work despite all the rejection. I love this example. So, okay. So you get an order from Zappos, or, you're probably on cloud nine. Then it comes to the big dreaded next step, which is, oh crap, I need to fulfill this. What was that like for you, right, when you got this order?
Well, what's crazy, and thinking back, it's just insane because I didn't have a project management tool, which is huge in our business to maintain all of the orders going on at once. I was using Google Docs to send quotes and would download pictures and put them on the Google Doc and try to reformat it. It was a nightmare. And I would just take really long to do stuff. But luckily, I had time on my side. I could spend 24 hours a day just working on this one client and this one presentation and this one order. But it was so much internal stuff because I didn't really have any help. I didn't have any employees or anything. So it was just me figuring out every single part of the process that goes into play with designing merchandise. And I really do take a lot of the stuff that I've learned today of ironing out our amazing process that we have now is because of how much time I spent looking over those early orders and just making sure I wasn't making a mistake or doing something foolish. So after the first couple of Zappos orders, I was just refining the process that I was learning on the spot. How do I go to a factory overseas or in the United States and tell them what we want and get a proper price? That was step one. It was just figuring out to make sure my pricing was right, so I knew what margin to charge to Zappos or any client. And once the numbers and the product stuff was figured out, it got a lot easier because then I really knew what my function at Indigo was and how we should be selling to people.
I love that. So you mentioned either going overseas or, going to a US based company for your material, for your actual products. What was that journey like finding the place? I guess I could start with the design, but I'm more interested in the material right now. How did you find sources to print, making sure they're doing it the right way, at the highest quality, at the right price? What was that adventure like for you?
Yeah, it's funny because I just did again. We had no like when I started, we had no clients, we had no factories, nothing. We had no teammates. It was just me. So my genius way of doing that was typing into Google factories in the United States, and a bunch of stuff came up that didn't help me at all. And I just went down this rabbit hole of figuring out how to find vendors or factories in the US and overseas that are reliable and have a whole product line that we can lean on to make these products. So once I eventually figured out that there's organizations that specifically are shown as badge of honors that when a factory is in, you can safely order from them. That was a big realization for me because then I knew, okay, now I know where I can get the actual items from and who is really handling the production process, if you will. And from there, it was just an easy way of vetting them. It was calling them. It was who's the most personable, who's willing to talk to a new guy like me. And I'll tell you, the factories that were able to talk to me and dumb down info for me and understand that I was new and were cool about it, I still order from them today. And we still have relationship from today. And I think that's just my favorite part of business right there, that I can work with a factory for 5 years just because they gave me a shot and explain the process to me of how it worked early on.
All right. So is it wise and do you in this business have multiple suppliers, or is it kind of one or two that handle everything?
Yeah, we have tons. So now we have a whole list of preferred factories that we use. We also have our own in-house manufacturing, which is our biggest differentiator and has been for the past couple of years. So now we do a lot of the screen printing, the embroidery, the bag
Oh,
making in-house. And that right there is a huge advantage that separates us from the crazy amount of merch distributors on the planet. So not only do we have trusted factories for specific items, both overseas and the United States, we also do a bit ourselves. So, and that's huge because it's the difference of a global company calling me up and saying, Ethan, where's my stuff? And me having to figure out where it is on the planet versus me just walking down the hall and checking with my production team. So that is usually one big way that makes Indigo a bit different.
all right. Well, take me down that rabbit hole. What was that like when you made the, because it's only been 5 years. So like you went from, essentially you're a dealer, right? You were taking orders for materials, you were finding the source of the supplier, and then you were placing the order with them and taking the margin. Now you move to being able to be a manufacturer and, production in-house. Tell me about that process. When did you guys go to it and what was that like getting that all set up?
Well, it wasn't as challenging as it seems when you say it out loud, I feel like, but there was just so many. It's almost like my naiveness helped me here because the whole time early on, year one, that the thought that was in my mind was, man, it would be a lot easier if I didn't have to just outsource everything. If there could be some stuff that we kept in house. And that has been the biggest and a most amazing thought that has changed the game for us because that one thought led to us figuring out what machines to get, figuring out if we could partner with the screen printer and embroiderer, figuring out if there's somewhere specific in the New York, New Jersey area that we could set up base. And it was just getting these simple questions answered that led us down the path of this is where we want to end up. What direction do we have to take now to make sure that we end up there? So it was really just me being naive. The majority of people who are in this industry are just reselling things. They're just going to a factory and getting it made, which is totally fine. And there's a million ways you can make merch. And we just chose a way that I think works for us and works for our clients as well.
Well, and it's produced in-house, so there's a far more degree of control for you, and you can say produced in the US, right? Like we know where this material is coming from and we stitched it ourselves or we screen printed it ourselves, right? So there's that added benefit to the consumer. Does that add, I guess, when it comes to your pricing, does that affect your pricing compared to going to other competition? Does it affect your margins? What does that look like?
So prices that our clients, our end users will pay are way lower than if they were to get something made custom at a different distributor or a different factory. And the reason is because we're able to create all of these amazing custom, mainly bags from scratch. Man, I always walk people down two different lanes. Option one is a fully in stock item that we can get from any of our factories that we work with or production teams that we work with. It already exists. It is known to the whole entire market. And option two is you're coming to me with something that lives up here that you draw out, that you came up with on ChatGPT, that you don't even know how to explain. And whenever you go to a vendor with that type of project, they're allowed to jack up stuff as much as they want because you can't get it anywhere else. For us, we don't really look at it like that. We look at it as we're bringing your vision to life. And now, because you gave it to us, we can bring it to life for other people as well. So we're able to get the price much lower because we're not jacking it up to a lot compared to a lot of different vendors and how they would.
Gotcha, gotcha. Okay. So I've kind of glazed over this, but I'm curious, when you were starting and as you were starting to scale this business, did you have investments? Was this totally bootstrapped? Were you scraping by for a little bit at the beginning? Tell me your story about, the backside where all, financial comes into play.
Yeah, I love bootstrapping. I knew out of college, I was like, I'm going to bootstrap the crap out of whatever business I start. Like, I didn't want to have to deal with all the politics of having investors and handling, those complexities. So early on, because we didn't have the in-house manufacturing, the goal was just to keep getting projects in the queue so that we could eventually go down this route and have past projects pay for future projects. I was scraping by and was paying myself nothing, which is totally how you should do it. But that was really just a strategy we had because I didn't think it was necessary to get investors involved and I didn't want to have to pitch my ideas. I knew it would work and I knew that if I gave great service to the clientele that we worked with, eventually it would all work out down the line, which so far it has.
So tell me about your team and when you started building it. This is leading into a question about customer service, but when did you make your first hire?
My first hire was 3 years ago, and it really, the whole time early on, I was just like, man, I'm doing so much. Man, I'm working 24/7. Man, like, how do I stop doing all of the admin work and the stuff that I don't want to do? And that thought, like, it never really struck me to just keep hiring people. Like that was, I don't know why, that wasn't really a strategy I had early on. It just one that I almost got forced into making. So, luckily I discovered Dan Martell and his book Buy Back Your Time, which really helped me understand the whole hiring cycle and who you should bring on first, who should you bring on second, third, fourth. And that allowed me to hire an executive assistant right away to handle a lot of the admin stuff and just the day-to-day things that weren't necessarily at my level of importance that I needed to focus on right away, but they were stuff that needed to get done. So after making that first hire, it freed up my time to handle the more complicated projects that were bringing in and generating profits for us. And that's where I love spending my time, on the revenue generating activities that are worthy of a CEO doing throughout the entire day.
So let's keep rolling down that road and talk about revenue generating activities. So more along the lines of your marketing and sales. How did you start? I know you got the Zappos account. That's a heck of a way to start. But how did you continue to keep that snowball rolling and get more and more clientele, more revenue so that you can do obviously all the amazing things you've done since?
Well, I'm a big believer in leverage, and I think that is such a good thing for early founders and entrepreneurs to know because I looked at it as once we got a big whale, now we can use the big whale to catch bigger whales and to catch just other people in general. So I loved just talking about what we were doing with people and throwing out, hey, we work with Zappos. Hey, we work with Zappos. Hey, we work with Zappos. That alone helped us reel in some bigger fish that we really had no business, working with at that stage. But I think, and it's such a funny answer because a lot of people, I think, would judge what I'm about to say, but early on, it was all about customer service. And I know tons of people say that, but tons of people don't actually live by that. If someone emailed me at 3 a.m., I was answering them at 3 a.m. I have the emails to prove it. And it was just, that was our ethos. That's what I live by. I want people to get their information and their product to them ASAP. And I want to be so easy to work with that people don't have any reason to go anywhere else. And I think just having that early on and then instilling it into all of our future employees and employees that we have now has led to that way of thinking just being the Indigo way. And I think anyone who has worked with us will tell you, like, these guys are freaking crazy. Like, we'll email them late and they answer. We'll call them at all times of the day and they'll answer. And that's what I want to be known for, no matter how long this company is around for.
So help me understand, as you started building your team, how did you instill that as part of the ethos? Did that come down to, making sure you're hiring the right type of person or people who can understand that you don't just talk customer service, you actually do it? What was that process like for you in making sure that became part of the culture?
I think it's twofold. I think number one is you can't just say that and then not hire people who you believe have that passion about them. Like when I'm interviewing someone, I have to ask about those topics. Like, how much do you care? How weird are you? What do you think about customer service? And what's a great example of you giving customer service when, you were dealing with a mean person or something like that? I think asking those questions beforehand has allowed me to really filter who I bring into Indigo. There's been excellent candidates that have wanted to work with us that I really didn't allow to work here because I didn't feel like they encompass that spirit. And I think you have to hire against your values. And if you don't, you eventually look around you and say, where did all these people come from? Who hired them? Because they're not acting like the Indigo way. So I think that's part one. But then part two is once they get here, it's constant reminders. It's reinforcing people who do things that you like and that encompass that spirit, and tell them, like, you're doing a great job because of X. Hey, everybody, Sharon did an amazing job today. She did this because of whatever's happening with this client. So I think reinforcing the structure that we want after we teach them our way is super important to just have that spread throughout every department, no matter how many people are new or how many people get hired in the future.
Tell me about your marketing. How do you guys keep the pipeline of orders full? Do you guys run advertising? Do you rely off referrals? What does that all encompass?
Yeah, so we have actually never paid for advertising to this day. Early on, I was just like, I just think if we're doing things a proper way and we're working with the proper clients, they'll be willing to tell as many people about our services as possible. That was the early strategy. It's just how can we get as many referrals as possible? And that's what we were built off of and still run off of to this day. But recently, we've had such a big social media push. And I actually, only in the past couple of months, have put someone in a social media role so that we can have organic marketing, bring in leads constantly. And that's what I love, because it's as simple as just sharing stuff we're doing behind the scenes, which, by the way, very few merch companies do to this day. It's not a lot of that happening for these bigger brands. And I think that's one of our biggest strengths, that we can show off a lot of the projects we're working on, the clients we're working with, the products we're creating out of scratch. And those two strategies alone have really organically just brought a lot of people into our pipeline.
So I'm curious about like the margins in your business and how you make sure that each order maintains margin, and then your top line. I mean, you started from zero, so you did an incredible thing from creating something out of nothing. Where are you guys at today? And I'd love to have a better understanding of your margins.
Yeah. So in the first thing that I had to figure out, like after a couple of months or a year in, was like, what are other people selling this stuff at? Because at the end of the day, it's just whatever you say it is. Like and you don't know, sometimes you're not getting feedback from clients saying you're too high, you're really low, you're right on. You really have no idea. So figuring out that the industry average margin wise was 35% early on gave us such a good frame of where we should at least be for certain projects. Depending on the complexity, that can swing anywhere from 20% if you're working on a bid all the way to 45%. It just depends on the complexity that you're dealing with and the manual labor that's involved with figuring out the project. What people don't know, and because it's tough to explain this to someone that is working on a project with us, is that some things take a while to research. You can't just come to us with a concept or a theory that you want to have made and expect us to right away know, okay, it costs this, it costs that. You have to figure out a lot of things from different factories and a lot of touch points. So those are the areas where the margin could go up, north to 45, 50%, just because of the manual research that it takes to carry out the project.
Okay, got it. So, kind of help me understand what are I guess, the types of complex projects that come in? Are they just very large in scope and scale? Or are they like very customized type of material? What do those look like?
There's two really big types that I think would be easy to explain. Number one is product based. So if somebody, like we work with MAC Cosmetics, and they're the most creative people on the planet, they'll come to us with these bag concepts that they want made. We just did a project where they wanted a metallic lunch bag that had a magnetic closure and you had to roll it a certain amount of times before you could close it. So it's just that's a lot. You're asking for a lot here, and there's a
Yeah.
lot that go into it when you're just looking at a drawing. So for an item like that, it's constant back and forth with me and my production team down the hall to figure out exactly what's going to work, what's not going to work, what are some roadblocks that can come up when we're doing the full production run. And that is a good example of a product that might be complicated that we can't just go to a website or Google to be like, lunch bag metallic, type it in and have an image pop up. We really have to formulate and do a lot of testing on our end to make sure the concept is possible. And it's not always possible. We'll give them something that is close to their vision, but it's not always maintainable, if you will. So that is an example of an item complexity. The route two is if the items are tied in with some type of experience, a logistical challenge. So what's really cool, and we do this for a lot of our bigger clients that are Fortune 500, is our merchandise is really just the icing on top of the overall experience that is happening, which is the proper way to use merch, in my opinion. So we recently worked with Arizona Iced Tea, where they wanted all of these custom boxes made, and the whole goal was to promote a pop-up shop that they were launching in the city. The issue and the hard part was we were supposed to send all of these boxes out throughout the entire country and to deliver them before a certain timeline. And we would have had to speed up production on every single product to make that happen. So it was just figuring out what products are we going to use and make and how are we going to design them to get them to arrive at these influencers' doorstep on time so that it's before the pop-up and that they can go to the pop-up with their box and show all of their friends.
Wow. Okay. So you guys are doing more than just, taking orders for 400, carryalls or, tumblers. These are like some pretty highly customized projects that come in.
Yeah, and it's also, I had a big theory early on that so much of what people make in merchandise is transactional. If you come to me and say, I want 200 hoodies, and I'm like, sure, give me your money. I hate that. That's just not how I want to be sold to. So I don't like to sell like that. I like people, and this is how I like my team to operate, to always be pushing the envelope on what is the best we can get out of this project. That is how we have created some of the coolest products and how our clients remember us, because we're not just taking their cash and saying, yeah, you'll get what you get. It's, okay, this is your vision. Maybe we could sprinkle some of this stuff in. What do you think of that? And it just creates this really healthy back and forth that I feel like has grown Indigo and has also grown how our brand is viewed in our clients' eyes.
Tell me about your team. I can tell from your website you have a pretty structured team right now. What is the structure of that team and kind of what was I guess, again, it's only been 5 years. How did you develop your team over each passing year?
The most important thing for me early on was just I want to have a really good CSR team so that I can avoid answering emails at 3 a.m. and 5 a.m., whatever, and know that projects are always being handled correctly. So I early on developed a playbook, if you will, through a company called whale.com, whale SOP. And basically I had all these SOPs of little things that I did so that they knew what to do no matter what situation came up. So developing all those processes early on was huge, because then when I hired my CSR team after my assistant, I could just give that to them and say, this is every situation that could pop up here. you'll see some, variety and some variations off of this playbook. Study it like it's your Bible, please. And now, anytime something happens, you don't have to go to me. You can just answer the client back right away. And I think that was very important. And that's not something that early founders do all the time because it is time consuming and it is lengthy and it takes a while. But then you know that your level of service is always going to be met or come close to being met. So early on, it was just getting those CSRs on board. Right now, we have two of them who are phenomenal. And I knew that they would be able to handle all of my projects right away. And then from there, I could comfortably hire a sales rep who does a lot of the selling with me and targets a completely different niche than I do so that I can focus on my niche, he can focus on his niche, and then we can toss it over the fence to our CSRs to get the project delivered and make sure there's no issues with it.
What's the process like for a new customer coming in? Do they order online? Do they call in? Do they explain what they want and then you guys fulfill an order? How does that look?
So a lot of it is questions. My first red flag for the clients that we're working with is how do they respond to my questions? I have a lot of questions. I'm annoying. I will ask about the smallest little detail and I have no shame about it. And the reason why is because I've made so many mistakes on projects that came from not asking questions that now I just want to get it all out there and I want everything to be answered so that we don't mess anything up. And when a new client contacts us, it doesn't have to be this official onboarding process of having a Zoom call and meeting the team and everything. It's simple. It's really just a series of emails that give me what I need to set them up for success. How many projects do they plan to have in the year? What different types of projects have they enjoyed ordering in the past? What's something their old merch vendor didn't like to do? All of these questions helps me understand the trajectory of what vision they're trying to have met. And it's just so cool because I've gotten such interesting responses from so many different clients out of these random questions that are like tossaways that have really helped me grow Indigo and have helped me understand what different people are looking for. So it's just a lot of question-based selling and a lot of things that get all of the possibilities of mistakes and not being aligned out of the way.
Got it. Got it. In terms of your ICP or your ideal client profile, are you serving mostly small, medium-sized businesses? Are you selling more enterprise? Is it a mix of everything?
I'm almost embarrassed that we don't have an exact ICP down. We have a lot of mid-sized clients. We do have a decent amount of enterprise as well. And then that's really where I focus. I am mid-sized and enterprise corporations that are in the Fortune 500. And then my sales rep focuses on schools and, smaller to, mid-sized businesses as well. So we really can hit a nice circle of people, but normally clients are coming to us who have these visions for their project, their large scale event that they want done, but don't have a vendor that's willing to listen to every step of the process that they want carried out and all the complexities involved. We have become known for our bag making. My bag designer is one of the greatest designers in the world. That's self testimonial there, but he's one of the best
He's in
bag
his
makers
bag.
on the planet. And and he knows how to do all of these complex creations that have really let us become known in the custom bag world. So that really is where our trajectory is taking us toward, just focusing on a lot of different bag projects. But any item you can envision is something we make. So it's really a cool double factor that we have.
So it sounds like these days, for you personally, more of your focus is on the higher level, or you're still in sales and dealing with the mid-sized to enterprise level. What does the day-to-day look like for you besides the selling in terms of leading the company?
Yeah, so my favorite thing to do is to do podcasts like this because I really feel like over the past 5 years, we've developed a really good process for selling merchandise, but we haven't developed a good process for telling people of how good we are at making merchandise. So just getting our message out via social media, recording videos with my team member, and doing podcasts like this is something that I have on my calendar every single day. I'm selling every single day to marquee clients and accounts, and I'm also projecting the message that we want to get out to the world as well. On top of that, what's interesting is I've almost transitioned to a bit of a manager like role because now we do have 7-ish team members on the team going on 8. And a lot of questions come up in merchandise. And although we do have processes laid out for people to look at, there's a lot of stuff that I still need to get my hands dirty with. And in a way, it's a negative, but I look at it as a positive because I love staying in the weeds. I love staying in the grass and seeing what issues my team is finding and seeing on the day-to-day basis so that we can course correct right away. And that's something that I'll do forever. I don't care if we have 500 employees. I'm always going to be checking in with the people who are the day-to-day, on the day-to-day sales side, who see all of these problems come up, but maybe they don't want to tell people about the problems. And I look at it as my role to get it out of them so that I know what changes we need to make week by week so that it doesn't bite us in the butt later on.
Well, spoken like a true entrepreneur, just a problem solver at heart.
We try.
Right? Yeah, yeah. All right. Well, so as we round this out here, I guys should probably land the plane soon. Where do you see your future in the company in the next year, 3 years, 5 years? What does it look like for Indigo?
We've been very fortunate to work with I call them whales, these whale-like clients, the Fortune 100, Fortune 500 type of people. And a lot of the time early on, we were biting off more than we could chew. We weren't ready, and we really had to figure it out as we went along. We are at the point now where we have it down to a science and we know how to work with these large behemoths of clients. So it's really time to scale, and it's just growing slow and steady and bringing people on internally who share our same vision and share all of our core values so that when we're working with these bigger clients, we can then handle more projects that they're throwing our way. Because even to this day, there's so much happening in one large scale project that we might not be able to take on 50 at once, 10 at once, 20 at once. It's too much. And until we get to a comfortable size where our team can handle all that a big client can throw our way, I won't look at it as our next chapter. So that really is our next chapter, just being able to deliver on as many projects as possible for our big clients who we love to focus on.
Awesome. Well, Ethan, this has been fantastic. I thank you so much for stopping by and sharing your time and knowledge with us. I do want to make sure that anybody out there listening, if they want to contact you, learn from you, if they want to become a customer, what are the best ways to check you guys out?
Now we're making a huge social media push. You can find me on all social medias, mainly Instagram and LinkedIn at Ethan Dowie. And for anybody listening to this episode specifically, if you DM me millionaire, I will hop on a 15-minute consulting call with you. I don't care how many there are. We'll talk branded merch, we'll talk brand, and we'll figure out what your strategy should be.
Awesome. Well, that is super cool of you, man. So everybody out there, make sure you grab Ethan's offer here. That's fantastic. And thank you again for joining us, man. This has been a pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.